Right.
To start.
Good evening. I will now call to order this March 24th regular board meeting of the Pullman School Board. Our first order of business, as always, is the flag salute. And again, as Dr. Maxwell is by the flag, I'll let him lead the salute or ask him to.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which
it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next order of business is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. That being said, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Amanda. It's been moved and seconded that we do approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda this evening, please signify by saying aye there, or thumbs up, one or the other. Any opposed? Thank you. So next order of business is reports, and we'll start off with the adorable Mia giving the Pullman High School report.
Well, Mia sends her apologies. She's got another commitment tonight, but she did send her report to me, so I'll fill in for Mia. She said sorry for the late notice, but she's not able to attend the meeting. The past few weeks, we have been focusing on making hybrid learning a success for everyone here at PHS. We began passing out PHS masks and are planning to hang the hearts that they had previously made next week. And they are also making plans for a Spirit Week in May. And that's from Mia's ASB update.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, BARD reports. We'll start with Dr. Everman. Do you have a report this evening?
I just wanted to praise the board of the audit for the school district. The finance committee, Nathan and I met with the exit audit, and that was on the 18th, and we got a good bill of health thanks to Diane and the administration. So just thank you to Diane for all her help on our audit.
Perfect. And I'll echo that. Thank you, Diane. Okay, next would be Amanda. Do you have a report this evening?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. And Allison, do you have a report?
Just briefly, the Sustainability Committee met yesterday, and I was really excited to hear that some trees have been purchased for Franklin Elementary School.
Oh,
in addition to some smaller native trees, they have purchased 3 large, what will be large shade trees. There are 3 different varieties of red maples. It should be a really gorgeous asset to the campus eventually. So exciting.
That is. So it takes a while. It's a good exercise in patience for those young kids that came and made a presentation to us last year, I think. So, but that's exciting. Now we just have to wait for them to grow. All right, Mr. Roberts, do you have a report?
Yes, a couple things. One, I'd just like to second Jim's comments about our audit. I'm always really impressed with how smooth the district audits go. I mean, I think this is my 4th one, and we've never really had a major problem. And I do think that's a testament to just how great Diane is at her job. So I just wanted to say great job, Diane. I also had the pleasure of speaking with a couple of our legislators last week, talking about some legislative priorities from WASDA and also for kind of Eastern Washington. And so those meetings went well, and just let me know if you guys have questions.
Okay. Nathan, could you run over quickly what the priorities are from the hot topics? Would you mind?
Yeah, no, for sure. So WASDA provided a list of kind of top priorities to discuss, most of which centered around enrollment stabilization and transportation stabilization for funding. And so, looking trying to get legislature to look back at our enrollment rather than using the previous year for our budgeting. And so that kind of helps level the line. There were also some topics on graduation requirements and easing some of the options for career flexibility, using different options for graduation. And then there was a big push to increase staffing assistance for social workers and counselors, different sorts of enrichment activities, just really trying to kind of get a hold of what the situation looks like budgetarily and also with the legislature, coming out of the pandemic. So, but yes, I'd be glad to talk at length if anybody has any questions.
Oh, no, that's fine. We just debriefed some. Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it. These are all hot topics that we, as WASDA calls them, that we, as directors, have agreed upon as being important to us this year. And hopefully the legislators will listen. All right. Next is my report. And I have no report other than I too attended the 2 meetings with Representative Schmick and Senator Schessler. And I think they went very well. So not very well attended, but that way we each got plenty of time to have our say. Okay, next would be Superintendent's report, and that would be you, Dr. Maxwell.
Well, thank you very much, and appreciate that. Well, Director Roberts and Everman took care of my one of my items, which was the financial audit. So again, great work by our team here. Second thing I'd just like to report on is our Professional Development Day on March 19th. Was an excellent day of professional development for our staff. All staff were required to attend racial literacy, which was provided by Ashley Boyd and Brandon Cockburn from WSU. And this is the second time we've had them present. They just did a fantastic job. So I want to shout out to them. We also offered math, English language arts, classroom management, music, special services, and a variety of other professional development opportunities. So a great day, and a shout out to Teaching and Learning for their organization putting that together, Roberta and her team. So great day all the way around.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, is that the end of your report?
It is.
All right. Well, next we'll go on to program reports. First one is Maintenance Facilities Asset Preservation Program. And our presenter is Mr. Joe Thornton, our Executive Director of Operations.
Thank you. I need to piggyback on your comment about trees. I remember learning this once, that trees teach us patience and grass teaches us perseverance. So it's an important horticulture lesson for students to learn. So this is an annual reporting requirement. Every year by April 1st, I need to report to the board the status of our buildings, specifically those facilities that were constructed with the help of SCAP money, School Construction Assistance Program money from the state. And the reason for this program, which came into place in 1993, is basically the state wants to make sure the taxpayer dollars invested in school money, school buildings, is being taken care of by districts. So next slide, Courtney.
Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes. So this is just an overview of the program requirements. Again, we've been doing this since 1993. Next slide shows the scale we use, and this evaluates buildings, everything from foundations to roofs, all components of school sites. Courtney, next slide. And this is just a brief overview, a snapshot of one building. Obviously, knock on wood, the high school is still in excellent condition across the board. The only 2 areas where I indicated one component is good was with boilers. We have one boiler up there that's giving us fits. If you remember, we repurposed boilers from the old building into the new building. In hindsight, was that the right call? It might have been for one of them, but So one of the 4 boilers is giving us problems, although we could heat the entire building with just 2 boilers. So we're in very good shape up there right now. Next slide, Courtney. Another example of an area where I gave the district or a component fair was roof and roof construction, but that will be fixed this summer thanks to you and your willingness to fund the metal roof, which will make that a 50-year roof. So that next year that will be moved to excellent. So that's an example of these components do not always get worse. We improve on them. Another example of that was the Franklin alarm system a couple years ago was giving us problems, and we did an upgrade on that 2 summers ago, and now the fire alarm system at Franklin is rated as excellent. Next slide, Courtney. Here's what's interesting about this. Even though we will continue to use this rubric as a way to monitor building conditions, CAMIAC is not a required reporting under APP because no SCAP money was used to build CAMIAC. There was class size reduction money, but that's not SCAP money. So the state has said we don't have to include that in APP. However, next year, the Woodland County Transportation Co-op facility will be part of this presentation. Next slide. And next year, we will be required to do for 4 of the buildings, the middle school and Jefferson, Sunnyside, and Franklin, be required to hire an outside inspector to do the 5-year building condition assessment, which is a requirement every 5 years. And next slide, which is the kind of the watch items or the hot topics in the district. We're keeping an eye on boilers at 3 of the buildings, although in the middle school, 1 of the boilers is being replaced. The one that was the worst in the worst shape as part of the remodels being replaced at Lincoln, so that will be an improvement. Sunnyside asphalt, it's not worth dealing with until we completely rebuild or move that building. Same thing with the slab, the multi-purpose roof, concrete slab. And the roofing systems at Lincoln, Jefferson, and Franklin, obviously the Lincoln one will be taken care of. Jefferson and Franklin are on our watch list. Pioneer Center, Aquatic Center, ever since COVID hit, the city hasn't said anything about making upgrades to Pioneer or to the Aquatic Center. And then obviously the Transportation Center is being addressed as we speak. And then just wanted to mention the upgrade we made a couple summers ago to the alarm system at Franklin. Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Joe, the Sunnyside slab structure, is that the same as the west wall that was leaking before?
It's similar. It's in the same part of the building, and there's subsurface moisture there. Whether or not that was built over a spring or it's just the shape of that whole property and that bowl, and the fact that the school's at the bottom end of it. But there's moisture under the building. The only place that's a problem right now is in the NPR slab and causing tiles to pop up, and we repair them. But it's the cost to replace that slab without fixing the water issue, and you can't really fix the water issue without moving the building, would not be worth it, especially when that building's in year 25 of use.
So that's independent of the west wall that's leaking or that had moisture. Is that correct?
You mean the west wall of the basement?
No, I thought it was the upper level.
It was a gym.
It was a
The
gym.
Oh, the gym. Yes, those are independent issues.
So that's still ongoing, or would that get repaired?
That has been dealt with, yes. We sealed the top of that wall. The water's no longer penetrating into the CMU wall.
Thank you.
So is the multi-purpose room the lunchroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions of Joe regarding this? Well,
Thank you,
thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right. Our next report is from Roberta Kramer, our Assistant Superintendent, on curriculum adoption update.
Okay, this should be quite brief. I'm pretty sure that Courtney's going to put my slides up there.
Da, 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 da.
There, she's on it.
There you go.
There they are. Okay, so we're just going to start by just for me to bring you back a couple of years, our most recent, a recent adoption, because we've had quite a few in my 5 years here. It's really exciting. We recently adopted Second Step. And if you remember, the puppets came and talked to you, and the dog and the pup. Yeah, okay. So it's a social emotional curriculum for grades K-5. And during the pandemic, it has been such a saving grace for us because we were required to provide it. It's the best practice anyways to provide social emotional instruction, but it's all right there. So it was great. Teachers are using it. We're encouraging them to quadruple up on lessons if that's what we need to do right now as we have kids back. So the timing of that could not have been any better. Next slide, Courtney. Then we talk about our most recent adoption was one that we made last summer in the midst of a pandemic, and that was Bridges Math for grades K through 5. You can imagine that the implementation in a pandemic could be really problematic, but honestly, our staff jumped in so far and have just done a great job. We provided professional development for all staff members last summer and have continued that during our learning improvement days. And we will continue it still next year, because next year, hopefully, we're going to be teaching post-pandemic. And so it won't necessitate some of the same instructional moves that we've had to make. It is just truly a package of best practice. And I just have to commend all of our teachers for their enthusiastic implementation, even in not the greatest of circumstances. And yet teachers that are still teaching at a distance are doing number corner. It amazes me, and they make it work. And Johnny has just done a great job at supporting the implementation and making sure that it's all put in place. It might not surprise you that she's already put together some materials for principals to use next school year on what to look for in observations of Bridges lessons. So our next adoption, as you know, is elementary English language arts. And we had started that process last year along with mathematics, thinking we would be able to do them both. But what happened was that we got to the point where it was really a time to stop and do some more learning and to really take a look at our best practices, really balanced literacy. It's that the reading, the writing, the comprehension, fluency, all of phonics, it's everything. So ensuring that what materials we selected were best practice. So there was kind of a timeout, and we did some of that work. And now we've narrowed materials. I think we have actually narrowed to one as of today, with a likely field test in April. Possible adoption this spring. We're going to be really thorough and sure to take so that we know how to implement, how we can provide the professional development along with the implementation. But our staff have been asking for these materials, have been craving new materials. In the meantime, as we waited from last year to this year, we did do some supplemental adoptions so that staff had materials that were ready to use at a distance, also can be used in person. So we have been able to do that. When we're thinking about now after ELA, if we go to the next slide, Courtney, middle level math, we need to look at middle level math. We know that we do. We've been doing a lot of supplementing in order to teach the standards, and then certainly have to take a look at high school math and is there a need there? As you know, we've done science and social studies at the high school, so it's probably time to take a look at math materials, and then also really expanding our resources that support inclusion and belonging. And while that's not a formal adoption that would need to come to the board. It's really something in the forefront is our work that we're doing to really create an equitable system. We have got to look at our materials so that kids are seeing themselves in the materials, so that they are really considered to be those that are the best materials that we can be providing to kids that really focus on inclusion and belonging. So we've had some teachers that have done some small grants and gotten some materials, but we need to do a much better job of that across the system. So, high school English is beginning to have those conversations and other folks. So we're very excited about it. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Allison.
You mentioned that those are the materials curriculum related to belonging and inclusion doesn't need to come to the board, but I think the board would be very interested in hearing your accounts of what's going on. We do have a representative on the curriculum advisory committee, but that even greater depth about what those conversations are about substantively. I think we're all committed to this equity work too. And so we want to go on that journey with you. So
I am happy to bring, happy to bring all the materials in the world to you. You know that. So
that's
sign me up, Courtney.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Kramer. Appreciate it. Next is our equity update from Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Susan. So a couple things that we've been focusing on recently. One I mentioned as part of my superintendent's report, and that was our training recently on racial literacy. That's excellent. We're looking at continuing that partnership with WSU and our learning as we continue to do professional development. The second I'll bring up is that, as I've mentioned before, the district administration and building administrators are doing a book study, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. We had our, every Monday, we take a chapter. This week was chapter 3, Beyond Access, Belonging. A great conversation, and I do appreciate board members that have been stopping in to joining us via Zoom in the book study, and they're always welcome, of course. So it's just nice to have you participating when you're available. I know the timing doesn't fit with everyone's schedule, but I appreciate that. We will look forward to expanding this equity work with our staff and with students. And so we're working on some initiatives to broaden this work as we continue to move forward. And that completes my equity update.
All right, thank you. Okay, next is the visitors section. And this part of the agenda is for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group. Visitors wishing to speak must have signed up on the virtual sign-in sheet. Visitors addressing the board will unmute their microphone when called upon and may state their name, address prior to presenting their information. The board will listen and may offer clarification, but will not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic presented to a future meeting date to discuss. Please keep your comments civil and respectful, and we ask that all remarks are limited to 3 minutes and may not be gifted. Individual speakers may not gift their time to other speakers. We have no visitors signed up, but it's a pretty easy process. So if you are interested in visiting and making comments before the board, please feel free to contact Courtney Hodge at the district office to sign up to speak. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is to expedite business at a board meeting. This includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by a member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. These include minutes from our previous meetings, personnel report, professional service contracts, transfer requests, warrants, and budget status reports. Are there any changes to the consent agenda any board members wish to make? Hearing none, I will ask for a vote to approve or a motion to approve the consent. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that our consent agenda is approved. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor signify with a thumbs up. Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. The consent agenda has passed. Next, we go on to our action items. These items have all been previously discussed by the board at prior meetings, and now we will take action by motion on these items. First of all is the 2021 to 2022 PHS courts proposal by Dr. Kramer.
As I shared with you last time, our physical education and health department at Pullman High School have been taking a real deep dive into their courses and look to make some name changes as well as content changes to better align with long-term health and fitness. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about them. Mr. Polstead is here as well that could take questions if you have any.
I think the description it was in the course offerings that Allison had questions on descriptions. Okay.
Yeah, and I
So-
think that we have rectified all of those.
Okay, good. All right. So are there any questions? Oh, poor Justin. He's going through this meeting and no one has a question for him. All right. Well, if there are no questions, then I will entertain a motion to approve the 2021-2022 course proposals as presented this evening.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we do approve the 2021-2022 PHS course proposals. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Any opposed? Thank you. So they have been approved. Next, we have the 2021-2022 LMS and PHS course offerings. And again, Dr. Kramer.
Okay, so we have, we spent a little bit more time getting all of this in the way that it should be. The additions to Pullman High School course offerings is that advanced lifetime fitness and making some other changes to those fitness 2 courses, and updated graduation information, high school credit from middle school, and all of those components. We did remove pre-algebra as a prerequisite for grade 7 algebra 1 that should have never been there. In both catalogs, we have added the fee waiver information and a little bit of a change to the visual arts course. Justin, did you want to respond to a couple of other questions that had been asked around number of courses that we include in the catalog that then maybe don't get offered because of lack of enrollment?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, last week or last board meeting, the question came up of how many courses are offered in a typical year. And so I went back and looked at things and looked at this previous year what we had, and we're in the 90-ish range of courses that are offered per year. And I think the second question was how many are listed, how many are offered that we don't actually follow through and have that year for whatever reason. And that's in the mid 80s. So it's about 3 to 5 courses a year that don't run that following year. And I pulled the ones that we didn't run this year, just for a couple examples. One of them was Careers in Ed, which is a new CTE course. This would have been the first year that it would have ran. And we just didn't have the numbers to run it this year. And so that one didn't go. We had a GLAM, which was a senior math course in the past that we had run that was for, it was a test prep course. The state has moved away from that, so we don't run that course anymore. So kind of those types of things. We didn't run a work-based learning course this year because it was because of COVID. We didn't think that was great to be sending our students out into the community at this time. So, but then we have other courses where they'd kind of not run for a while because of staffing or because of kind of student request wasn't there, One of those was drafting that didn't run for a couple of years, but this year we were able to run drafting. And so it just kind of fluctuates a little bit. But just to answer that question, it's about 3 to 5 a year that don't run.
So one of the things that Justin and I have talked about is developing a procedure. I think it falls within procedure for courses that should be struck, for lack of a better word, from the catalog. Like, when do we just make a determination that that course isn't appropriate anymore? Because that does happen. Like, times change, or interests change. That's part of it. So that's something he and I are going to explore further and kind of see what other districts are doing related to that. But I would hate to remove some things because, like he said, drafting is back.
Yeah.
And if we'd taken drafting out, then kids wouldn't have even been able to explore that. So it's hard though. And I one of the things that the high school is great about is being flexible. We might have enough students for Spanish 3-4. We don't have enough students just to offer a Spanish 4 class. And so they put those together. I mean, the staff have been incredibly nimble in order to offer the most things that we possibly can.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this?
Just a comment for Roberta and Justin. I understand what you're saying about times change, and sometimes a title change is necessary, but not necessarily a course not necessarily the curriculum. There might be some minor tweaks. Is there a mechanism by way a course might change its title, but without changing the curriculum content so much, without having to introduce a new course? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm not sure. I guess we could probably explore some of that. I see that. I can understand that from a university perspective.
Well, we did look at, we've had British literature as a course, and we are pushed to make the change to a historical literature class for our sophomores, because it's not focused just on British literature and just that kind of specific point. We're trying to be more broad than that. So we have made that change. That's in the course book now.
Yeah, and we've had conversations about that, but almost all of the time, Jim, it ends up being there is some change to standards that are taught. The content changes enough that I think I would want to bring it to the board.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well then I will call for a motion.
Allison's got one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It was less of a question and more of a comment. I just want to thank you, Justin and Roberta, for, I think I was probably the person who asked most of those questions, and you answered them very thoroughly. And I really appreciate the careful thought, and just, as long as we have to review this each year, making sure it just really represents where we're at. And so I just really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I think it helps to have Allison go through it too and keep you on your toes. She's very thorough, and we're lucky to have her. Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve these course offerings if someone is interested in.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Allison. It's been moved and seconded that we do approve the 2021-2022 LMS and PHS course offerings. Are there any questions or discussions? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify with a thumbs up. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. All right, thank you. There being no one to offer a thumbs down, we'll consider the motion passed. Next would be the 2021-2022 Pullman High School fee schedule, and Principal Polstad will present this.
I thought this was, did we discuss this last time?
Right. Oh, you're just defending it, I guess, if anybody has questions.
Okay.
So Justin, is this how it's presented in the handbook, or is this just for our purposes, this particular piece of paper that you're showing?
There's two sheets, I guess, that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
The one with the background of the change from like the 16 to 15, that's just for us.
Okay, sure.
The other sheet would be what's presented to our students.
And I don't know, the one I looked at looked like kind of a rough draft. It didn't say anything about the fee schedules maybe being waived. So will it be?
Yep, that's just at a different point in the handbook.
Okay, so there won't be a reminder.
We certainly can have a reminder there, but we want to make it kind of a little more prominent at an earlier spot in the book.
Okay, as long as it's really noticed for those who, we don't want anybody excluded because of finances.
Absolutely.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, are there any other questions regarding this? Okay, well then, if there are no other questions about this fee schedule, I will entertain a motion.
You got one more.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. My screen does not show everybody. I try.
That's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. I knew there was a reason.
This totally could wait till the discussion, but I was just curious where this fee schedule is published. Is the fee schedule on the website, or how does somebody know in advance what the fees are?
Yeah, so yes, good question. It is on our website. We have it available at school, and so we publish it out as much as possible so people are aware of it. When we do our back to school in August, hopefully we'll get to do that again this year. Our Greyhound Gear Up, it's posted there, and folks are able to take care of it at that time. We'll also have the information about how that we will assist as needed for our families.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 Pullman High School fee schedule.
Thank you, Nathan.
Second.
Thank you. All right, there is a second. So it's been moved and second that we do approve this fee schedule. Are there any other questions, or is there any other discussion regarding this? All right, seeing none, hearing none. Perfect. Okay, I will call for a vote, and all those in favor of approving the 2021-2022 Pullman High School fee schedule, please signify with a thumbs up. Thank you. All right, and being everybody did a thumbs up, we'll consider the motion passed. Thank you. So now on our agenda are discussion items. These discussion items are presented to the board for discussion. If they need any action, they will be brought back at the next meeting. Our first discussion item is the 2021-2022 Elementary Family Handbook.
Thank you, Susan. That would be me. So we're bringing to you, as we do each year, the 2021-2022 Elementary Handbook. So it's been revised. The handbooks are available online and are updated throughout the year as needed to reflect policy changes. We do have paper copies at each school that are available on request. Really, the major revisions this year, we removed the winter weather FAQ. We'll replace that with the most up-to-date information on the district website. We'll make a note of that. Bus transportation rules of conduct are provided to new students at the beginning of each year. Replace the long list of rules with a link to the student safety procedure, walking, biking, riding buses to ensure families have access to the most up-to-date information. We did add safe routes to school, added more information about free and reduced price eligibility and fee waivers that apply at the elementary level. So we made that more prominent, updated policy procedures as were appropriate, and added a hyperlink to media opt-out form and a text opt-in notification where they can set that up on their phone. So again, Courtney and the building principals and secretaries did a great job working together to produce a standard handbook with specific building addendums as needed, because there are some procedural routine things that are different in each building because of the building design or campus design. So again, we're continuing this work to improve it based on feedback. So this is your first view for discussion tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Concerns? Any discussion? All right. Well, we'll look it over and, oh, there she is, Allison. Good, good, good.
Well, I just think that this is fantastic work. It's been making progress year after year. And to me, the big leap that was made this year is making it so much more visually engaging. The front part of it, the district section, with all of the color illustrations, which in a digital format we can do. Why not make it as visually engaging as possible? But you know, when we do make it visually engaging, we are inviting people then. It creates its own sense of welcoming and encourages people to engage with that text and actually read it. So it's super important, and it's just really great work. And there was some added content I noticed about discipline that addressed equity concerns that I don't recall being in there before. The safe routes to school also. If I would say, it's great for this year and maybe next year, work, maybe some of this district snack policy could go into the district section to make it a little bit more prominent, maybe in between parent volunteers and I can't remember the lunch program. It would make sense conceptually in there or something between parents and foods. But for this year, it's just wonderful. And so hats off, Bob, to any members of your staff who worked on this. They did a great job.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. They have done an outstanding job, and it's not easy trying to standardize an elementary handbook for 4 elementaries. But the team has just done an outstanding job on it, and I appreciate the snack policy. We could definitely work on that in the future. It's also been, I would say, a little challenging during a pandemic to try to figure out what next year is going to look like in a handbook. So there may be some updates in the next few months, depending on how things evolve. So, but we did our best to prepare for what we think will be, and if needed, we'll update it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I think so helpful for our parents, and that's what we're here for. So great. Okay. Any other discussion on the elementary handbooks? Okay. Next, then on our agenda is the Allison's turn. The 2010 annual organizational meeting policy.
Okay, so you'll all recall, and by the way, it was a great discussion that we had about this last time. I really appreciated thoughts and perspectives that you all shared, and so I'm continuing to just try and help and bring us closer to what we want as a board. So I have 2 different policy options that keep the board rotation concept and keep the idea of extenuating circumstances being a reason to skip a turn, and move those committee assignments out. But then now we have come to the point where we have to determine, are we going to stay with the 2-year term or move to a 1-year term with the vice president being more of a president-elect position that would promote continuity that way. I think these are both great options. I've thought about them a lot. I think they both have a lot to recommend them. The biggest difference that we're going to see is in our current practice, you have, by the time someone is a board president, they've generally been re-elected. They're very seasoned. It's a very kind of stable board. As was mentioned last time we talked about this, it would promote the idea of everyone getting an opportunity to serve as president. Not a guaranteed, but it definitely increased the likelihood if we move to these one-year presidential terms, because you're talking about serving as president anywhere from your second to fifth year. So that's kind of the difference there. I do think both of these could work. I think we should consider if there are coordination issues, potentially. I like the idea of having a two-person team, a president and a president-elect, but I also think there could be more, it could be that much harder to schedule meetings with 3 people than 2 people, especially if they have wildly different schedules or something. So I think that is something to just consider. But I do think they could both work. So I'm just here to continue to listen to you, to refine these options. If there's one that people like, we could move it to an action item and vote on it. If we want to continue to see changes, we can just keep discussing it till we get it right.
Is there any discussion, any questions?
Allison, first, thank you, for doing this. I appreciate all the thought you put into it. And I totally agree with you. I think either option, works well. And just presents a couple of little differences. I think the 1 year term, but with a president-elect, I'm just thinking about the last couple of years, how the workload has intensified, on Susan with all the communications, for instance, just like hundreds of communications. It might also be nice to have that president-elect as a backup to kind of, say, okay, now that we're getting hundreds of communications, let's delegate to you part of it, or, someone to collaborate with to share the workload whenever things get rough, and I like that idea. I don't think we need to fixate on if they both can't attend a meeting one day, or if their schedules don't align. I'm sure, they could work it out. If it's Susan and Jim, I'm sure they could just talk afterwards or something, right? Like, I think that's something that we could work out. The 2 year term is kind of limiting to someone when they get on the board, because they are waiting, like say, Amanda and I came in on the 2 board time period, because there's like 3 under election, 2 under election. That puts us like 6 years out on the 2 rotation. But on the 1 year, it puts us 3 years out. You know what I mean? And so I like the opportunity for more people to be able to serve. But those are my thoughts, really. I think the 2 year option is perfectly fine. But I just feel myself drifting to the one year, but with two people. It just sounds more dynamic and collaborative.
Well, I will say that there's a pretty steep learning curve, especially with Robert's Rules of Orders. That is the thing that's the hardest thing to learn. Even having been president before, there's still a lot of nuances that I still haven't figured out. So that's what the 2 year term has really helped get that under control. But other than that, you really don't need the vice president to meet all the meetings that are an extra things. And that when Bob calls the president about something, he shouldn't have to call 2 people and things like that. So it doesn't matter to me. I won't be around to serve another term. So there you are. But it's up to you all what you think is best for the board.
If I could just respond to some things Nathan said, I agree about those adjectives, dynamic and collaborative. I agree that that second version of the policy could produce something more dynamic and collaborative. I do also think it has more unknowns to it too. The benefits of dynamic and collaborative could also there could be some drop. I don't know. I mean, there's just more unknowns for me because I haven't done it that way, but I do think it could definitely work. But the point that you raised earlier about, well, when the responsibilities are really heavy, it is the way it's written right now. The president serves as spokesperson for the board unless they delegate to someone, and the president is always able to delegate communication to anyone they want to for any reason. So I realize that Susan did more than anybody should have to this year, but she could have relied on the rest of us. She could have said, you take A through G, you take H through K or whatever, and there's lots of ways to work around that. So
one other thing about the 2-year terms is that we all have kind of special projects. I know, Allison, you like the social emotional, the equity, and the sustainability. My thing has kind of been getting ducks in a row, like this policy, trying to make it so it actually reflects what we do. The board protocol, we're trying to do an equity statement other than the COVID, and then some other things like that. So at least 2 years, it gives the board president a chance to share with the board their priorities, what their focus is. So it's just a different 1 year. You really, it takes so long to get anything together that I don't know if 1 year would do it, but that's just a different view of looking at 2 versus 1. It's not my preference. It's just a different view on it. Amanda, I know you haven't been president yet, but this is your chance to make it be the way you want it to be if you ever end up president. You have anything to add?
I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other. I think that either would work. I kind of lean towards the 2-year term. It just seems like just more consistency, especially for Bob or whoever the superintendent is. But it's nice to hear everybody's perspectives. I think everybody has some really good points, and I think either would be fine.
Okay. And Dr. Everman, you're up next as president. Do you have some input for us?
Well, having served as president before, I think there is a continuity for 2 years. The first year, you're basically still learning. And the second year, you think you know it all, but you don't.
Yep.
And things like COVID or things like property management or things like personnel always seem to put us in a perilous situation. I'd like to get Bob's comments as superintendent. He knows a number of superintendents and he knows a number of boards. Your comments, Bob?
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I think both of these are well drafted. I think there are positives with both, but there is a consistency issue, item that probably for me is one that would be possible concern, maybe not. I mean, it's really hard to tell. Every year in the school district's a little bit different because different items, as you mentioned, come to the board depending on what happens. And so I think there is some value to the consistency part. I think it also lends to larger projects. Having someone for 2 years might be helpful rather than having 2 different people in 2 years, when your project, like a curriculum adoption, usually doesn't go a year, it usually goes 2 years or a year and a half. So I think there's some value to that. I think what I really appreciate is just this discussion has been really helpful for me to really think through how we operate and how the board operates. And I think this helps set a structure that no matter which one we end up with, we've had a great discussion about the pros and possibilities of the unknowns moving forward.
Thank you, Bob.
Amanda.
I guess the one additional question that I have, under extenuating circumstances where a board members steps down from the presidency or skips their turn. And maybe I missed this, but I feel like we need to address or decide if the person who steps up then finishes that term and then has their own term, or if they start their 2-year term at that time rather than having to serve for more than 2 years.
Excellent point. You're right. My feeling would be that you would finish out that 1 year, even if it's, that would throw off the rotation, but I think a maximum of 2 years might, Allison, think on this one.
Yeah, I will think on that some more. I mean, we know how it happened in the past was that we all just moved in 1 year early. And it did end up being then a 3-year term. It was odd, the timing of that, the extenuating circumstances being exactly halfway through a 2-year term. And I wonder if we hadn't had that election that year. See, this policy changes. This would not be if we keep the 2-year terms, we would not have an annual election. We would have an election every 2 years. So that would be, the person really would have to leave because of extenuating circumstances, rather than what happened in Dean's case is he chose not to be reelected under extenuating circumstances because our policy allowed him to do that. And so I think part of that was an artificial thing, an artificial timing created by having that midterm election, where what would have happened if we had the 2-year policy as drafted here, he would either say something the moment the circumstances became extenuating, or choose to tough it out and finish it. And then maybe we would need to write something in that says that if the term is, less than half complete or more than half complete, or, I don't know if we need to just wing it. But I guess what I'm circling back around to talking out loud is that happened because the policy and procedure didn't quite match up perfectly. And ideally that wouldn't happen again.
But it could.
It could, but I mean, part of it was that we had an election in the middle of a 2-year term.
Yes, but for instance, with me, maybe I just decide I can't take it anymore. And my term ends in December, but I may want to just say goodbye earlier, which sometimes is good for a board because it gives the board a chance to fill the new member with the, not counting on elections, but you can find someone that you can agree with but fit with, kind of a thing. So maybe in procedure, do we have a procedure? Yeah, we do, because we have the rotation schedule. Maybe something be included in the procedure.
And there is language about if the position becomes vacant or, yes, that is in there. I think it's easier conceptually to think about when it's one person holding president versus if we change these and both people are rotating. That's a little bit harder to write about, but it's doable.
Maybe another thing we could consider would be, if somebody decided that they couldn't fulfill their entire presidency, having an interim finish that term and then considering the regular rotation going back into effect once that interim situation was fulfilled.
I appreciate that suggestion. I will take a look at that. Yeah.
I like that, Amanda, because I was thinking of that as well. It takes the burden off the incoming president to add a third year, which is what Allison undertook. The other component here is the communication. The president has to communicate with a lot of people, such as this year and last year, and how the communication is conducted. I think that probably needs a little more clarity associated with it, because I think we've talked about communication over the last 5 years, and I think this is really vital that the communication be done timely, but it has to be a uniform voice for the board, which means it usually would have to go through the superintendent's office. And so there's a lot of layers in that communication. It's not just, we received your note and we're going to work on it, and that's it. I think the constituents are expecting a lot more from us now, as we talked about over the past few meetings. So I don't mind, if you don't mind, Allison and the board, that we table this and maybe bring it up at a workshop, because I think it involves all of us to one extent or another, including the superintendent. But to address the interim one, which I liked, Amanda, but also how to organize the communications, that really is vital.
I think to respond to you, Jim, I agree. Communications is super important. I think we could work on that, not necessarily in this policy and procedure. That does sound like something that we should talk about in a work session, and then consider there's a different policy that's about the duty of officers. It might be something that falls under there, or we might draft our own separate policy about what a board communication looks like or something like that. But I think of those as being conceptually separate from this. And right now, it sounds to me like there's an area that's still a little bit vague in everybody's mind, which is this idea of the interim term or what happens when we have a vacancy. And so I'd like to play with that a little bit more and come back basically and continue that conversation, because I think that is central to this policy and really resolving all of our unknowns with it. And then maybe take these other conversations, which I agree are really important, and do that in a work session, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
Allison, I totally agree with you. Those seem to be separate issues. I actually really like the idea, now that you mention it, of a separate policy for communication. I mean, I think that, because I think on average days it's not a big deal. But when when there's a lot of contradictory messaging flying around and no one knows really, I think during those times it would be really helpful to have more of a systematic approach, and I think if we had that policy in place, I know, sorry, the kids are doing something out there. But if we had that policy in place, it would help us when that bandwidth kind of kicks up to deal with it, and maybe that is, setting conditions for assistance or delegating work, or because I really do think it's also not entirely fair to the president to have to do all of it while we just kind of sit here and watch. I mean, I've often felt like it's I'm making someone else do all the work, and so I think when the communications get there, it gets kind of extreme. It would be nice to have something that kind of gives all of us a task to do. But those are just my thoughts. But I agree with you. They're two separate, and it sounds like we're mostly clear on this one. And I mean, honestly, I think without that one thing, we could probably vote on it.
Okay. Well, since Bob and Susan, you have board planning, do you think you could look at a future work session where we maybe can discuss this communication thing for us? And I will plan for whenever it works into the next board meeting to have another version or two of this policy that addresses that officer vacancy situation.
Would it help you, Allison, to if we voted on a 1-year, 2-year term tonight, so then you'd only have to really work on, in essence, one policy?
If the board is willing to give me that direction so that I'm headed down one policy route, actually that would help me, because then I don't have to parallel edit two different side-by-side versions. That would help. Thank you.
But it depends on the board. If there's a
Yeah, and if the board isn't there yet, that's fine too. I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't know about y'all. I'm comfortable voting on the 1 to 2 year thing.
Oh, well, I am, but Jim, Amanda, would you be interested? I mean, could we vote on at least establishing a term limit for the presidency?
Well, I go back and forth. So I'm kind of fuzzy right now. That's why I kind of suggested we table this and put it before a work session, but
that's fine. I don't mind parallel editing. It's just you guys are going to have to read two next time, and that's fine too.
I don't know. What about you, Amanda? Yeah, I mean, I'm just one vote, so.
I'm leaning towards the 2-year term, but I wouldn't have hurt feelings either way.
That's how I feel also.
Given that it's a discussion item this evening, and Allison, I apologize for the additional work, but maybe we should just leave it as we'll look at another draft. Because it sounds like some of us are, on the fence or, thinking. I was kind of going for 1 year, but you guys make good points, So I'd like to kind of think on some stuff too.
Not a problem. Okay. I'll keep working with both of them. Thank you again for a great discussion.
Well, thank you, Allison, for taking this on. It's pretty awesome. And I'm so happy it's you. All right.
Thank you, Allison.
Next on our agenda is discussion of policy 3432, which is emergencies, and Dr. Maxwell.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. So, I'm happy to present tonight policy 3432 emergencies, which, as you probably all know, since you read the policy in legal news, that in February 2021, it was updated via WASDA in response to House Bill 1216. And this really deals with specific drill requirements that have been modified and revised by policy. And so it reflects the current laws and needs relating to safety. So it's quite a bit of, I think, reorganization, some small grammatical things. Mainly it's just a bunch of reorganizations. I did take out the Lahar and tsunami portions because we're not going to have one here. So hopefully, or if we did, we'd probably be in bigger trouble now.
I was gonna say, we'd be in big trouble if we had either one of them.
We'd be in real big trouble. So just to save a little ink, that was removed. Other than that, we do all these drills annually. We do very well. You'll notice that the pandemic has been scratched out. We have a separate pandemic plan. So, and they don't include it in the new sample policy. So Other than that, just some cleanup, what I would call, and some clarifications.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this policy? All right. Well, as always, look
Well,
at.
I just
Oh, thanks,
had a
Jim.
comment. I've been listening to the Malden, Washington aftermath, and the Forestry Service is putting on some continuing education for how communities can respond to fires within the community. And I'm just wondering, was fire involved in the communication, Bob?
Not specifically other than fire drills. We do have a procedure for smoke, which we're more likely to in our area, during bad fire seasons have smoke issues. And so we do have procedures set for that. Also, we have, because of the pandemic, purchased the highest end filters that we can put into our HVAC systems, which will really help with smoke. And now that all of our buildings by the end of this summer will have cooling units established, we'll have much better equipment to deal with smoke in the future.
Thank you.
Any
Anyone
other?
else? Oh, sorry.
So anything about catastrophic fires then? I wonder what, Jim
Not
has a
really.
point.
Not really catastrophic, although if we do have a catastrophic issue, whether it's a fire or earthquake, we do have procedures that we follow.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, again, if any other questions pop up before we vote on this next meeting, feel free to contact Dr. Maxwell and ask. All right. That is it. We do we or do we not have an executive session?
We do have an executive session, but it really should only be about 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Well, that is it. The only other items on our agenda are just informational items, administrative requirements update, Voucher audit schedule, Burke calendar procedures. And so we will adjourn to executive session. And Dr. Maxwell says it'll be about 5 minutes. So thank you all for attending and tuning in.
No action will be taken during the exec session.
Okay, thank you. I'll never get this Robert's Rule stuff down.
You got it. That's why I'm here to help you.
No,